This is the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast, session number 437. Andrew Waldowski on Hypnotic Fascination.
Welcome to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast with Jason Linett, your professional resource for hypnosis training and outstanding business success. Here's your host, Jason Linett.
A bit of a quick, funny story, or at least it's funny to me, would be the fact that over the years, I've been doing this program now for about 10 years total, and I've kind of playfully said the fastest way to not be on this podcast is to reach out and go, hey, when can I be on? And there's some clear exceptions to that have occurred over the years, but in many cases, the shape of this program is that this is the place where, honestly, I am capturing the conversations that I want to have with people in this hypnotic industry. Who are those people that I see that are doing things in a unique way? They have an interesting approach, an interesting philosophy to the work that they do. And at times they're a disruptor or they're one of the ongoing legends in this industry. So as I put out the recent episodes, suddenly a familiar name popped up, Andrew Waldowski, someone who had gone through some of my programs a number of years ago, just basically saying, hey, when can I come on? And I saw his name and went, yes, indeed. And I've got to tell you, the conversation that you're about to listen to is one that, quite honestly, really surprised me. That the person that I first met about maybe 4.5 years ago at this point has clearly evolved, has made some major changes in his life, has gone on this bender of training after training, and really, by doing so, not just becoming a clone of the people that he's learned from, but really over time, truly developing his own philosophy, his own specific approach to the work. So in this conversation, we're going to dive into his personal journey of climbing out of various addictions through losing quite a bit of weight and the ways that hypnotic communication has really helped to influence his way that he shows up in his own marriage and the way that he interacts with his children as a father. And sort of over time, the way that the premise of the work that he did originally really has evolved into something new. And of all things, I think we might have our first ever deep dive into the psychology of disc golf, which we haven't had on this program before. But you know what? After this conversation, it's about damn time. So this is session number 437, talking about hypnotic fascination. And you're going to hear not necessarily a deep dive into this technique versus that technique, but more so a deeper understanding of exactly how change occurs, what has to happen in the mind and the body to get it into motion, and by doing so, how we can then facilitate that change in a consistent way. I'm amazingly impressed by this journey that Andrew has been on, and I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. You could head over to the show notes for this episode by going over to worksmarthypnosis.com/437, worksmarthypnosis.com/437. That'll bring you directly over to this week's episode with the notes and any of the various links and references that we've made. And while you're there, also on your web browser, check this out, velvetropehypnosis.com. The quick story is it goes back to a time frame, maybe 2015 or 2016, when I suddenly developed a really interesting problem in my hypnosis practice. And this is a problem whether you're seeing clients in person or even if you're seeing them online. And it's a problem that I know that some of you would want to have. I had too many people calling me. I had too many potential clients reaching out and calling me. And here's why that was a problem. Not everybody was at the appropriate point of, as I would put it, being qualified enough to then be put into a situation to then make a decision. So I had two options at that point. Option one is that I could have just hired somebody to then take the calls, though I thought about it for a moment. And option two was, what if I can better condition the relationship in that phone call prior to them getting on the call with me? What if I could pre-qualify them in a slightly different way so that then, not just for the sake of not hiring somebody else, but more so I can make it so that the people who then jump through the appropriate hoops to get to me would then become the people that were more likely going to book with me and were ready to make that change. And yes, indeed, we're also ready in accepting the fact that my fees would be higher than most. So it kind of began as something that was just a little bit of technology, but really the larger psychological principles around it of what became what I call the velvet rope strategy. It's not just about putting a calendar application on your website and telling people to go here to schedule a call for a consult, though that is a small element of it. It's more so the psychological journey that we're going to take them on. And I'll tell you, this is how around the world, not just from my results, but from results of people like you, we've helped people to eliminate no-shows. We've helped people to really just increase their booking rate. We've helped people to maximize their time. We've helped people to get rid of that scenario where you might be on a call with someone for 30, 40 minutes, to which then they don't book with you. And rather than just tell you what to do, you get to watch me in real time build this out so that by the time you go through this rapid training, you have your own velvet rope strategy launched in your business. Yes, this is something that I sell, but for those of you that get offended when people make a sales offer, relax your sphincters. This thing is $27. And it's worth a whole lot more. So check that out over at velvetropehypnosis.com. This has been a game changer to hypnotists all around the world, velvetropehypnosis.com. And with that, let's dive directly into this phenomenal conversation with Andrew. Here we go. This is session number 437. Andrew Waldowski on Hypnotic Fascination.
For me, it was points of fascination. I would find myself fascinated by things and then just absorb myself. I think I really noticed it when I got into my personal growth of a sport called disc golf. And I met a hypnotist playing the sport of disc golf, and he talked about quitting smoking with hypnosis and helping people quit smoking. And he wasn't real serious about it, but he was into it enough. That was my very first kind of okay, I need to look at my thoughts and beliefs a little bit more, and what am I getting fascinated by? And that's how he put it to me, is that it's a point of fascination. And then from there it just unfolded, where I started to want to make changes after that. So while I was playing disc golf, I was smoking cigarettes. So not only are we throwing frisbees at a basket in 100-degree heat, but we're doing it while we're smoking 15 cigarettes during that time. So you're like dying in two ways. One, you can't breathe, and two, it's extremely hot. So in my younger years is what I call it, out of my ages of 20s and so on, I was already struggling with some health issues, some excess weight, had some social anxiety. I had just some things going on that wasn't where I wanted to be. And so, yeah, after I heard that, this is probably like 2010, 2011, I started to, make a health journey for myself. I started to quit smoking. I started then to, lose weight. I started to, turn off alcohol, turn off some of these bad habits like Netflix marathons. And that's what really got me started. And then, yeah, I was like, you know what? I need to actually officially learn this.
Well, let me pause you there for a quick moment before we get into the learning journey, that the word fascination is one that stands out here. Like, if you kind of could go inside of that fascination, what about it grabbed your attention? What about it really, pulled your focus?
Yeah. So when you play disc golf, just like ball golf, you're throwing a frisbee at a basket. So when you're hitting a hole in one, we call it an ace in disc golf. So during this process, when I was playing with the hypnotist, he talked about people hitting an ace get fascinated that they're going to hit that. They get fascinated by this point. So that's what made sense for me. Because when it clicked, because I had hit a couple of aces in my career of disc golf, when that clicked for me, I realized that I was visualizing the whole process, start to finish, from the steps I took to the way I extended my arm back, to the way I extended the follow through, to the way I saw the disc going to fly on the trajectory that it flies, which these things don't fly straight. They fly like at a way major curve. And so when I saw that curve happen, and then I saw my ace happen, the very next ace I hit, which is probably at like one or two tournaments later, I hit an ace at a tournament, and I did it that exact way. I got fascinated. This is the hole I can hit the ace. I got fascinated. This is the way I'm going to follow through. This is the way it's going to be when they see me hit the ace. And sure enough, one thing clicked just like that, where it went very law of attraction, and I manifested that result. And then
If I had a dollar for every time we started this podcast with conversations around the associations of disc golf with hypnosis, I mean, I wouldn't still. Okay, hang on. No, I'd love to go deeper into this further, which is that, you've been through the classes that I teach, and
Mhm.
there's a thing I do on day one, which is really just revealing the nature of pacing and leading. And I go off on this tangent that different communities will often refer to the same concept with different names.
Right.
And it kind of begins with a bit of a negative, cynical story, which is that we were hosting a training with somebody in Virginia, and he suddenly goes, "Wait a minute, none of you have ever heard of linking suggestions? Jason, what the hell are you teaching these people? They've never heard of linking suggestions?" And then he explains it, and we all go, "Yeah, that's pacing and leading."
Mm.
And so I explained that a cause and effect, an action followed by a result, a pace followed by a lead. So let's take the word fascination here, because in some schools of thought, here's I fixation, here's fascination. And I think the riddle that I present is that all fascination is fixation, but not all, no, all fixation is also fascination, but not all fascination is fixation. Sleep. Okay, now let's explain this. That they would say that no, the fixation is the focused of the eye, the focusing of the eyes. But some would say the fascination is then the equivalent of keep your head forward and let your eyes kind of roll up and look at a spot, further above that visual plane, which is putting some strain on the eyes.
Mhm.
So just based on your personal experience, and let's set aside, oh, it means the eyes are pointing this direction. Like, how would you draw that line between fascination and fixation here? Or would you say, cut out the semantics, Jason, I'm telling my disc golf story?
No, I would say that you're right on point. Fixation is when something is fixed, if we just take the words around, and fascination is where something is fastened. So if something's fastened, it can become unfastened. And if something is fixed, it's typically fixed, meaning if I weld a piece of metal together, that's called fixed. But if I fasten a piece of metal to another piece of metal, that's called unfixed. So, if we just use the word not, we can go, fixed and not fixed. And if we go fascinated, not fascinated. But yeah, for me, what I found on my journey is that it's like, what are you paying attention to? And what you're paying attention to, you can get fascinated by, meaning that you get fastened to that thing, but that something could break that fasten, something could loosen that fasten, something else could just even remove that fasten all the way, and then you're free from it. Whereas when you're fixed to something, that's called, a relationship that you're in for a long time. So when you're fixed to something, that's called money. You're fixed to having to get money and spend money. So those are fixed things that we deal with in and out all day, every day. So those things, you're also fastened to them or fascinated by them, but you're at the same time really fixed to those as well, meaning that they're just kind of stuck in your psyche. And so that's kind of how I determined it with the disc golf story. Just circling it back full circle, it was that fixed attention to some of the details where I knew how to hit an ace. I know the style of throwing. I know the speed and the wind speed and the disc that I'm throwing and the 100 times I've thrown that disc, all of that. And then I get fascinated by the idea that it can happen for me. And then, the two together go really hand in hand, but that's kind of my interpretation on it, just breaking down the linguistics and the etymology of the words.
Yeah. So then from your angle, like, how would you say that aligns with, let's say, our clients who are in the state of their problem, becoming aware that something can change and something that needs to change?
Yeah.
And then where they start to then become aware, of course, of hypnosis, and now they're reaching out to us.
Yeah, exactly. So, it always comes down to what are they paying attention to and how are they paying attention to it is the questions we ask, where we put our attention, and then what we get back from the questions we asked, how we measure it, is how we experience the result as we know it. And that's called reality for you. And been studying a philosopher, Robert Anton Wilson. He uses a unique phrase for this called your neurological reality tunnel. And I like that. Yeah, because it's real for you as long as it's in your tunnel. I even did vegetarianism after COVID there for a couple of years, and I was in this reality tunnel of eating no meat. to where even I got to the point where I just couldn't even get near Jimmy
Yeah.
John's. And now, like I go to Jimmy John's no problem because I left that reality tunnel and I went back to the one I was in before because I want to eat meat again. So it's just one of those things. Life is a state of only seconds, not minutes. So I think that once we decide and we make that word decide happen, um, decisions always equal your destination. And so for me, I was always just, getting fascinated on the decisions I was making, so much that I'd be a vegetarian for 2 years and, not eat any meat. Or like I said, with the disc golf, I'd play. I'd set my calendar up with every single tournament, every single, weekly meetup. There's different courses around the area, probably about a dozen or so different courses, and each one has a day of the week they meet up. So I'd set myself up with that same fascination by asking the questions. Hey, can I do it? Can I do it? Can I play disc golf today? Can I play disc golf today? And by asking those questions, then it turns around and became my reality.
Which, let's jump forward then, where the hypnosis was the fascination and now officially going into the journey of looking to learn it. Like, what was the next step for you from there?
Yeah. So, like the next step then is the outcome, right? In order for a client to be good at the problem, to do the problem, they have to practice the problem. And so for me, when I had the problems that I had, I got really good at practicing these things. Like social anxiety, for example, coming out of playing video games for years on end and, just not looking the same way I did before I did that move. I started to think what other people thought about the way I looked. Then I also thought that other people thought certain things about the way I said things. So I was really careful as to like who I got around and what I said. And so I was fascinated by this problem, is what's called social anxiety, thinking what other people think. And so I really cared. You see, my outcome from that was that I wanted to not care what other people think. So the hidden ability that kind of came for me was that I just started to literally sort for states. I just started to go into like nightclubs and stuff. My wife liked to drink and dance, so we just went and drunk and danced, and that got me out of my head and more into my body. And I think the main revelation I've had from changes I've done and worked with people now on thousands of people is that the body is always in now, and that changing can only occur in now. So it's just shifting that habit of attention and then kind of like punctuating the experience enough to where it holds enough weight that, oh yeah, we got to change. We got to
Well,
change something.
Here's a question that branches off of that,
Sure.
which is that, just to go off of this word of fascination, here's the moment where you were in the state of social anxiety, but then here's the place where, let's use another word, you became curious about it.
Yeah.
Would you say that's one of those first steps that has to occur for someone to then begin the change process? Or does that fit inside of a different category?
I think that you do have to add a little curious element to it, because if you don't get curious, then that's called what is fixed, right?
Yeah.
I like to say we live life forwards, but understand it backwards. And kids are the greatest example. You have kids and I have kids. And this year I've got a senior in high school. So now I've got an adult as well. So when I see that transition from kid to
Oh,
adult,
wait, say it right. He's a kid when it's the right time, but he's an adult when you need him to be.
well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's just one of those things that, his
My daughter's a
curiosity,
child at the right moments, and she's a teenager at other moments at 13. So just, there's a line.
there is a line. There is a line. But when it comes to changing problems, the kids change problems very rapidly because they don't have to go through all the identifying triggers and establishing the root cause and the ISE and having the stigma of repeating it over 7 years of therapy. And then they can find personal growth. With a little kid, if they, find that they're in some sort of discomfort, then they get curious enough to, make up something in their head that's not uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's called feeling good for no reason. And then when they feel good for no reason, at the same time, they can't feel these things that we call triggers to being anxious or to being whatever it is in those specific situations where, for me, I was just so fascinated. I was so hyper focused that I had this problem that I got good at practicing it. And then, once I got so good at practicing it, then I was an expert at being socially anxious. Now it's kind of the opposite. From here, I leave to a place called Branson, Missouri, about an hour south of here, to a networking meeting with 200 people I've never met before. And so, in that situation, 15 years ago, when I was really in this problem, I would have been kind of freaking out, meaning I would have been kind of telling myself stories all in my head. And that's just what I call a stigma. And, the curiosity can kind of lead to greater empathy and understanding, I think, reducing the
Mhm.
stigma around that social anxiety. And that just like encourages more of an openness, I feel like. And that's been my personal growth, just sharing that quick story, with social anxiety. And then, yeah, you're right. Curiosity is it. It can turn a journey, any direction the minute you get curious. Otherwise, like I said, the opposite would be fixed. It's kind of like you're walking on a path, you're walking on a path, you're walking on a path. That's called fixed. But if you hear a waterfall off in the woods and it's only 30 yards off, 90 feet away, and you start off the path, that's called being curious to go see a waterfall. So that's a good metaphor for it.
I'd be curious to hear your take on this because, like, you've made some, in the time that I've known you, you've made some significant changes in your health, and you've made
Yeah.
significant changes even before we first connected. I tell the story of, here was the journey with my weight loss. And here's the one singular moment that my son Max was maybe a few weeks old at the time. I'm walking up the stairs with him, and I have to pause and sit down because I'm out of breath.
Mm.
And it's in that moment that I'd say emotionally, I dropped the last 30 or 40 pounds of body fat that I was carrying around. Emotionally, in that moment, it was gone. It was then easy and automatic to make the changes to my eating, to be consistent with the exercise. And like the rest of the weight fell off rapidly because, again, my telling of it is in that moment, emotionally, I lost that weight, that it no longer fit. It no longer was congruent. It no longer belonged. Um, what's kind of your take on that? Is it similar to how we need that spurring action? We need that activation point? Is it something of, you know, things that build up over time and then we really become aware of it? Like, what would you say, again, back to this question of what's got to be in place before the change can begin and really take hold?
Yeah. So that story is really cool because when you break it down and you say, you're out of breath, then it stems down to what's the deeper meaning, what's the deeper meaning, what's the deeper meaning, comes out to a sense of loss. If you really break it down, meaning that you feel lost, that you're not as good to keep up with your kid. And I felt that same thing around my story where these challenges have occurred and I felt some sense of loss. Sometimes loss is real and sometimes it's imagined. And in your case, it was an imagined loss that you imagined that if you can't make it upstairs now, then, this kid's just growing. He's getting faster. You're not going to keep up. And so that's a sense of loss. And I had actually the exact same thing happen. It was a challenge with my mom. She had type 2 diabetes. She was in a really rough state. And then they diagnosed me with being pre-diabetic. And then this is 2015, so about a decade ago, I started to make that like connection. Okay, well, if I'm diabetic, I lose freedom. I lose time because I have to take insulin. I lose freedom. I lose time because I could get neuropathy, which was what my mom had. She couldn't move. So I associated that loss that I was seeing my mom go through, a loss of time and a loss of muscle movement to, hey, these emotions are not good. So it's an emotional impact thing. And I think that is what is so much of people's experience is that all people are affected by the emotion. It all comes down to the motivation for change is how much emotional pain it either has turned into, right? Or it could turn into. So for me with the weight loss, it was a could turn into. It was an imagined thing, but it was imagined strong enough that I was like, yep, healthier habits. I'm on the keto diet now. Don't eat sugar. People are like, you're crazy. You don't eat sugar. And I said, yeah, I just don't eat sugar. I eat no carbs either. All I can have is 20 carbs a day. And people are like, that's absolutely insane. You're not going to live. You're not going to stay alive. Well, 1 month in, I lost 28 pounds. 2 months in, I lost 54 pounds. 3 months in, I was sitting around 54, 57 pound weight loss. 4 months in, I sat around the same. So I lost a lot of water weight and kind of plateaued. But 5 months in, I lost weight again. I was at 65 pounds. 6 months in, I was at 75 pounds. 8 months in, I was at 80 pounds. 9 months in, I was at 90 pounds. 10 months in, I was at 100 pounds. 11 months in, I lost 100 pounds in 11 months. And people are like, what are you doing? Are you on drugs? And I was like, actually, I'm doing kind of the opposite. I've removed all the drugs and chemicals from my system. All I do is drink a lot of water, which I did. And I detoxed my system because I removed all the carbs and processed foods. All I was eating was stuff I was cooking for myself. And like in a real pinch in a restaurant or something, I just get like a chicken salad instead, and eat it with ranch dressing because there's no carbs in ranch dressing. So it was just one of those things. And once I started to make these changes for myself, the challenges that like were faced during the weight loss journey, I just stuck to the strategy. I got fascinated by the strategy because I knew that it worked. And then the positive outcome was achieved both physically and emotionally. Now, after that, I changed from diet to diet to diet, and then I maintained the weight. And then I went to
Well,
weightlifting.
let me go after that. You
Yeah.
said changing from diet to diet to diet. That some would go, oh, yo-yoing, but I'd
Sure.
look at that and go, and this is where you and I probably align a lot on this, which is hey, what would happen if I do this one? What would happen if I do that one? And kind of that more human guinea pig type thing.
That was it. I was just curious. I was like, what would happen if I cut out meat completely? Because I just did a whole stint of eating a lot of meat. So I went vegetarian, honestly, right after keto. So I went from one extreme diet to another pretty extreme diet, especially in America. Vegetarian is pretty difficult to sustain and manage. And I did that for almost a couple of years. And then after the vegetarian thing, like I said, I left that reality tunnel and I started weightlifting. And of course, with weightlifting, you get whey protein and you just kind of break it down. You're like, okay, what else is there? Well, there's this stuff called steak that's pretty good for you. And so, I started eating more chicken and steak and just more meat again. And I felt better in my body. I felt, I don't know if there's this thing called the blood type diet. I haven't really studied it, but I think my blood type deals better with having meat. And
I mean,
so,
you might be familiar with the name of, and he passed away a few years ago, Charles Poliquin, who was
okay.
someone well known in the fitness space, and like it was one interview with him where he just simply said, you kind of owe it to yourself to test a bunch of things.
Yeah.
Because we all have different genetic backgrounds, we all have different ancestral backgrounds, and just some people's bodies respond to other things better. I've got to tell you, you did a thing about maybe 5 or 6 minutes ago. That here's the easiest way to piss me off. It's going to end well. It's going to end well. No, but it's the use of a complex equivalence to say to me, you did this because.
Yeah.
And if I can hear it and I go, no, that's not it. That's not it. That's like the easiest way. And I don't explode. I don't lash out heavily, but I will politely correct. But here's what just happened there. I told the story of going up the stairs, and you then labeled it as being loss. And my initial gut reaction was to go, no, it wasn't. Right. But then as I went to define it for myself while still listening to you,
Sure.
Everything else I went to was under the header of loss. Damn you. You're good. You're good.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I just have broken it down for myself to realize. Yeah. And so, like I say, loss can be either real or imagined. I think a lot of people need to hear this because people that, have high anxiety, people that have depression, it comes from a sense of loss when you break it down. And when you find out what are you really losing here, then and it's imagined, well, then you're not losing anything. And it can take away the entire story, which can cause people, because they hold on to their story, to get upset. But it's just a process that, for me, what I found along my journey is that when it's, an imagined loss, that can almost be worse than a real one. I was finding this out with one of my kids. He was just always wanting to buy RC cars. We drive these tracks as RC cars, and we watch YouTube channels with RC guys running boats and planes and drones and all the stuff. And so he's developed a fascination with RC. And so every now and then we go to the Walmart, we go to Target, we go to these stores, and there's these RC car sections. And so we end up just sitting there for like 5 minutes looking at these things. And, sometimes he'll, have money he's gotten or something like that. He'll leave with one. But other times he'll leave without one. And then his whole mood shifts. His whole persona changes. He becomes just a little bit different than how he was when we walked in the store. And so I started to notice this, and that's where I came up with this concept. I said, "Hey, look, buddy, are you feeling a sense of loss?" And he's like, "Yeah, I really am. I lost that RC." I said, "Look, you never had it. We never walked out of the store with it. So what you're feeling is you have imagined that you had it, and you imagined walking out of the store, didn't you?" And he said, "Yeah, I did." And I said, "Well, that didn't really happen, did it?" And so he said, "No, it didn't." And his whole mood shifted back to how it was before we even walked in the place in the first place. So when I found that out, I hacked his system, which in turn I hacked my own system to find out where I was imagining loss in life. And again, a lot of it is just made up, and that causes us pain as people. And then, all that thing. So it's just literally sorting, for the present. And when I work with clients, it's always the same two questions. What's the problem? Like, what do you want to work through? And how do you want to be different? I always ask the same two questions every session. Even the guy that was here this morning at the office, he comes in every 8 a.m. Thursdays is what we've set up. So I'm always wide awake and alert on Thursday, and I always have coffee Thursday mornings now, because I've started this rapport with this really good client. And it's a really smart guy, neuromuscular therapist, like just super smart guy. But he's so smart, he gets himself involved in his problems. That makes sense. And so, it's always asking, hey, what do you want to work through? How do you want to be different? And then what's it like when you're different? And he always can tell me what it's like, because he's good at imagining. And then, Jason, this very well, this is the meta model I'm running through. As you're feeling different, think about that problem. Associate the problem to the resource, and you don't have the problem work or operate the same way, because you change the neurochemistry in the brain. So I think that's a key for a lot of hypnotists listening to this is learning the meta model, because it's really a key to a lot of the outcomes that I get. I also work in now, like you do. You taught me that through your process of all we are is change now. Now is all there is. Like, when have you never not been in now is a good way to put it. And so, our experience of past and future is a construction. So then every access is a reconstruction, right? So how we experience change depends on what we're paying attention to. So what we're not paying attention to, when, how often, in what way, well, that creates problems. So if you go to your past, plenty of problems in the past, right? If you go to the future, well, nobody knows the future. So those are all imagined problems of the future, right? There's plenty of imagined November, whatever date it's going to be, problems that people imagine, depending on what side of the fence they're on and how much they've constructed the election in their mind.
Well, here's a question, though, which relates to, I know in the last couple of years, you went on this, we could say journey. I will say bender, because I did the same thing at one point, of going through a lot of different styles of training. Like, what are some of the trainings that you went through? Because you started to share some of this before we hit record here.
Yeah. One of the main ones I found that was really useful is a technique by a famous lady, Dolores Cannon. She wrote like 60 books. She's just like what I call a spiritual grandmother. She's like a OG of spirituality, like an original gangster. And so she has a really unique concept and belief system to her, meaning that she says that we come here and reincarnate, and that we do that because Earth is like a school, and we take these lessons from this Earth school. And that if we get the lesson and we listen and we move on, then we don't have to repeat that lesson. But just like in school, if you don't listen and you don't learn, then you'll be in second grade more than once. You'll be okay. So that's how she put it. And I like that concept, because I think that's true. I think that, I had some lessons even in this lifetime that I had to change. And I started to repeat those over and over and over, and even found myself back in some of the same cycles. Even after I quit something or gave something up, I'd still be in the cycle until it's like, wow, what was that really trying to teach me? Good question. Because if you ask better questions, you get better outcomes. Is what's the deeper meaning behind this? So I started to ask that question. What's the deeper meaning behind this? and I would find out, what am I noticing now? What am I seeing now? What am I hearing now? When I would find the deeper meaning. And that would always associate me from my problems to activate a better hemisphere of my brain to function better, which is the subdominant, the right hemisphere. So I could get more curious, I could get more creative, I could get more artistic about the problem and find a better way to deal with it. So with Dolores' work, she taught me a couple of keys. Number one is she taught me, not that you didn't teach this, but she taught the tone and tempo going in a way that is more of like a format. And I'll just use her language. She says that it's like a musician using a metronome, and the metronome goes dot to dot to dot. So then when she says her script, she just goes in and does it. And she always reads it scripted, but she always throws people into a deep trance. Just like the Dave Ellman induction. If you read it scripted and you do it with the right tone and tempo, you're going to get people in 3, 4, 5 minutes in a pretty deep state. Like their head's going to drop down. They're going to be pretty hypnotized. So,
well, I mean, I'd always go to step one.
Yeah.
Well, I got to quote Richard Nongard on this one because he nailed it. The people who are so against scripts are usually one of three things. One, not actually seeing clients, therefore it's armchair philosophy, and they're just simply quoting what everyone else says. Option two, actually using them, but repeating the popular thing. Option three, not actually using them. They're not necessarily lying, but they have things that they do that this little section of their work could be the same no matter who it is. Like you've heard me one time talk about how I saw a comedian and he then starts doing crowd work. Hey, Andrew, what do you do for a living? And gets the answer. Hey, miss over here, what do you do? Mm-hmm. And then he turns to me and goes, what do you do? And I go, hypnotist. And he goes, okay, what about you? And he ignored me.
Yeah.
And I won't say which comedian it was. It rhymes with Dom Irera. But I caught him after the show and it was, you made a judgment there. Could you come up with something in real time and have it be funny? Or would you get a bigger laugh by completely ignoring me? He goes, yeah, the second one. I'm like, well, since we're here, you got any questions? And then we hung out for 20 minutes and it was really cool. So it's that, there's aspects of it. And meanwhile, okay, I've got tickets to go see a show tonight. It's a musical and it's a well-known show and they're going to be doing the same words that were already written, in this case, about 40 or 50 years ago for this one specific play. So the script can be done differently every time. So let's not throw out the entire category because it's the popular thing to say.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing.
I just read all of that, by the way. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I like your word. You use the right word for it. You call it a framework. And in order to build anything, you better know what you're building. It's called, in construction, a blueprint. Yeah. My senior, he's looking at schools to go for engineering, to do construction engineering.
I don't know. I think he should just kind of freestyle it whenever he shows up for that engineering project and just kind of go with the flow and customize it real time and just see what happens.
All right. Yeah. So it's like Jim Rohn said, he puts it really succinctly that he says, in order for success to happen, you have to make success happen. And so for Jim Rohn, he has a really unique way of putting things that we have a perspective of, building a building. Well, in order to build a building, you better have a blueprint. Otherwise, if you just go out there and lay bricks down and somebody comes by and asks you what you're doing with these bricks and you say, I have no idea, well, they'll take you away for that. So the blueprint is really in turn just like the, way we construct our problems. It's the way we construct our solutions. It's the way we construct our goals. So in order to construct those efficiently, for me, what I found is that we just have to focus on the conditions that are working well and focus on the things that are in our control versus out of control. I've also found a couple of other keys. So you had asked some teachers. So Jim Rohn was a big teacher, and believe it or not, he's very hypnotic. You listen to his voice, you listen to his style, you watch his face, and you look at some of these old mesmerism videos. He's very he's very magnetic. He's got that personal magnetism to him that just, stands out. Tony Robbins, same thing. You listen to him. He learned from Jim Rohn at 17 years old. He worked with Jim. He went to, I think, 47 of these seminars. So Tony and Jim, those have been a couple of big mentors for me. Tony says repetition. Jim says this too. Repetition is the mother of skill. John Overdurf showed up. John Overdurf says this, and I'll leave this for all the hypnotists, is that the unconscious mind likes rhythm, repetition, and rhyme. And when I found that out, I use that with my clients. I use that everywhere now because it's true. When you start to, put things in rhythm, you start to put things in repetition, and you start to run, you get those songs caught in your head. You get like things going that you'd rather not have going. You see what I mean? And that's because you've repeated it. You've associated the problem state so good that you practiced it. You're repeating it. It becomes a skill. Some people get so good at it, like the last lady I helped quit smoking, 54 years. She was hiding behind the smoking habit. And, when I helped her quit, there's again the questions, that's the way you've been. How are you as a person that issue is no longer a problem in your life? And then she associated to that. Now
Well, let me ask you a question off of that, which would be that, here's one school of thought that, would say that we have to go back and we have to address the thing that started this in the first place.
Right.
And I then pair that up with something beautiful that I heard Sheila Granger say years ago. That's just sometimes people fall into a bad pattern.
That's true.
And, it may be that, okay, well, I think of this one client that I worked with, that if you ever saw the movie Hurt Locker, with Jeremy Renner, before he found arrows and joined the Avengers, of course. But it's the movie where he's going under the buildings. He's off in the Middle East during, wartime and having to disarm bombs. And here's one moment in the movie where he basically has to strip down to his underwear or naked, I forget which. And then that's the only way he could get to the bomb, disarm it, and then come out.
Right.
Take that story, make it a female who is now in a part of the world where women are told they're supposed to be covered from head to toe, except for a slit for in the fabric where their eyes can be, so they can see where they're going. And now there's shots firing. She's got a tarp thrown over her, and then she's thrown into the back of the van. And the first thought is, I've been captured, I'm dead. And then realizes, oh, wait, it's her team. She's been saved and put to safety. And that's where someone goes, here, smoke this and you won't have a panic attack. Yet in front of me to quit smoking, it's how, oh, yeah, that's about when I started. And I'm thinking, oh, we got to deal with that. But as I'm hearing her just talk it through, it's like clearly she's worked on that. She's addressed it. It's this thing that happened. As you think back to that moment, what's that feeling now? Oh, I'm glad I got to safety. So like it, by definition, was a traumatic moment, yet it was no longer the trauma. And it was against all odds of how many people would think about hypnotic work. It really became about the habit, the associations. It's like the story of someone who reached out to me to go, I'm working with this woman for sugar addiction. And no matter what I'm doing in the sessions, nothing's changing it. It's like, well, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Well, we've done 3 sessions working on forgiveness of this incident with her father, and she just refuses to forgive her father. Have you tried talking to her about the sugar thing yet? Her father could have been the biggest asshole in the world, but it doesn't necessarily need to be the reason why she's eating all this sugar. And it's where, we send over a quick little scheduling form and this, and like I'd asked you, share something you'd love to highlight in advance. And it's really this conversation we've been having the entire way through about quality of communication.
Yeah. And the quality of your communication is really directly related to the quality of your entire life. So as you know, we operate in systems and we call those rep systems or representation systems. So it's the way we represent reality. I like Anthony Jacquin, reality is plastic, because that's a good way to represent reality. Meaning if you get enough pain, you get enough loss, you get enough emotion of any kind, then that's going to heat up this thing called real for you. It's going to heat up your reality. And that plastic, when it's heated up, melts. It melts away. And your new rep is going to be your new mold. So for the smoker becoming the non-smoker, they have, the plastic representation of I'm a smoker. I need these innate objects to keep me calm. But the new representation, they come into my office and I explain what's in cigarettes. I explain what they do. I explain how it's a trap that they're in. I explain how they're free from a trap. I associate them to non-smokers like little kids and little babies and all the other people that just don't smoke. And then I, point out there's this problem, but then there's everything that's not. And everything that's not is the new rep system. That's the new representation. Those are called your resources you're looking at instead of your current plastic representation of I have smoking addiction. And really, smoking is a habit, not an addiction. And when you find out that, addiction means you got to have more of the drug in order for the drug to work, smoking doesn't work that way. This lady was smoking 20 cigarettes a day for 54 years and always was 20. If she really had an addiction over 50 years, that 20 would have increased to 30. 30 would have been 40 and so on. So it's not really an addiction. It's a habit. And I think that once you make people aware, you get the new rep to cross the line. And that line comes from language, which is what we're using here on the podcast, but it also comes from sensory experience. It comes from the VAK, the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetics that hit the nervous system and then causes the hemispheres of the brain to work and say, okay, this new rep overrides the old rep. I like the switch pattern because it does that very quickly. It just takes it and then says, overwrite, copy and paste. And Bandler's been a big teacher too. I've been following a lot of Bandler's stuff and I've been listening to his old recordings and some of his rare content and things where he was just 10, 15 years into teaching it. Some of that's just really very, very valuable. Because it often gets missed when you start to learn NLP. It's often relearned information, but when you learn it from Bandler, it's just direct from the source. So it's a little more potent. Some people, will know, but it's just one of those things that, even though it's potent, it's very powerful. Like you, started this with to understand matching a mirror, pacing and leading, following your client, watching their eye accessing cues and noticing what those mean and what they're accessing, and then making the change, putting them in the new rep, really having them believe in the new representation, and then watching their eye access cues as they try to go back to the old one. And that's when the plastic has melted and it's formed and it's solidified back into a new mold. And that's really the work we do. In my opinion, that's the best metaphor I found for it. And really, once you do that, then you have a new reality tunnel. In the conscious community, we call it a timeline jump. We jump to a new timeline. And I like that too. Meaning the old timeline is your old plastic representations. That was me, 100 pounds overweight before keto. And then my new timeline was, I don't eat sugar. I don't eat carbs. I'm on this new path. I'm on this new timeline. And sure enough, I lined up with it. And in a year, I was a totally different person. Weight wise, mental wise, emotionally, spiritually, I grew. Just a lot of different ways I grew in that time because I jumped onto a new timeline for me. Now we're all going somewhere. The question is where, and we're all arriving sometime. The question is just when. So once you find out, the answers to those questions, that's the quality of your communication, because the questions we ask ourselves directly determine the quality of our entire life. And a lot of people think communication starts with other people first. It doesn't. It always starts with you first, meaning that when you do well, you talk to yourself in a way that people talk to you when you did well. And when you don't do well, you talk to yourself in a way where people talk to you in your past that you didn't do well. And one has a different tone. One has a different tempo. One has different language. I know mine had a lot harder words in it when I didn't do well. And a lot of people, again, don't think that they're doing well because we set the bar so high, and it just gets set higher and higher every year. And if you don't reach the bar in the Olympics, then you are called a failure. You call yourself, I didn't make it. But if you jump over the bar, and I like you used a metaphor even one time with a girl that was in high school, and she jumps over the bar, and she made it. She finally made it, but she had that fear of heights before then. And so, but yeah, as long as you have the fear, that thing that's holding you back is only as real as you imagine it to be, which is what a fear is, then you won't make it over the bar. And if you're not making it over the bar you set for yourself, that's called the story of I'm not good enough, which I lived for a long time. And when you tell yourself anything, again, the quality of your communication determines the quality of your life. So then when you tell yourself I'm not good enough, well, you get a not good enough type of quality of life. But when you set the bar a little bit lower and you kind of really do account, okay, well, I made progress here. I made progress here. I made progress here. I did the best I knew how. Well, that changes the communication around a lot. Again, better quality questions, you get a better quality of life. And if you ask better questions, like one I found is, am I responding appropriately to reality right
Yeah.
now? Then, it's like, no, you're not responding appropriately. You're focused on what you can't control. You're focused on what you don't have. You're focused on what isn't working. And it's no wonder you're focused on all these things and you feel sad. You're focused on all this stuff and your physiology is all out of whack.
So tell me if this is an evolution or if this still stands. And I'll tell you the origin of this question, which is there's a friend of mine. He hasn't done this yet. So when you see it, it's his, which is that he's a designer and he runs a design firm. And he had this idea of let me run a podcast where basically more so a video content type thing, which you obviously see why in a moment. Let me interview people who have been in business for well over 10, 15 years and have the interview based upon what was their original logo of their business, what were the different iterations of it, and have that sort of journey through that. So I'm on your website right now, vibrationalhypnotist.com.
Yeah.
Are we still in the world of talking about it of vibration, or is it a world now of communication?
It's a good point. And I'm actually in the phase of like, what do I need to rebrand this to? Because it was a starting idea. Everything is
The rebranding is sometimes very simple because remember that I got off for 2 years explaining that, well, it was called Virginia Hypnosis because I lived in Virginia. And now that I've moved to Florida, we renamed the company to be Virginia Hypnosis in honor of the work of Virginia Satir. And 2 years in, people went, no, the website's still there, but it bought me 2 years emotionally.
I got you. Yeah, no, that's great. Satir's work is just pure magic anyway, so it does need the credit that it needs. But for me, I'm finding out that there's these laws, and when I was coming into these laws, I when I made the name, I was finding out about the law of vibration, the law of cause and effect, the law of correspondence, as above, so below. And these different laws. So that's where I went with it. I was like, well, vibration is kind of one of the first laws. So let's call it vibrational. I was also into, all the woo-woo stuff. So Reiki is very vibrational, sound healing, sound bowls. My office is in a yoga studio. So we got gongs and we have all these sound healing tools in here. Yoga is very vibrational. There's a lot of deep breathing, a lot of movement, a lot of moving the spine in every direction. So it kind of went hand in hand with that path. But again, I'm changing paths from everything is vibration to everything is communication. And that when you communicate, it does hold a certain vibe, meaning that if you use certain words to yourself over and over and you're using a certain tone of voice, that holds a vibe, holds a vibration. And if you use different words and you ask better questions, that could be called a higher vibe or a higher vibration. And so the two go hand in hand, honestly, because tone, tempo, tone of voice. If I start talking really high all the time and I just talk high, people aren't going to listen. But if I talk like I do and I use the highs and I use the lows and I use tonality, then people will pay attention. You see what I mean?
Well, you know why you can actually hear communication?
Why?
Because it's vibrations.
That's right.
So there.
It is. And sound has exactly. Well, sound has that whole effect on it anyway, meaning that when you're in a concert, what do you get? Hit with the sound on such a level that you've never heard that song like that before. When you listen to the music then again in your car and the vibration's not as intense, maybe the song doesn't hit you as intense. So it's just one of those things that like when you start to understand like the deeper science of things, it just starts to align that, the way we're communicating, but also the style in which we're doing it brings resolution very rapidly, especially with what I found are addictions. My main focus has switched from kind of like, take whatever I can get to what has always been told to me in this profession to niche down. And so I want to help people with smoking because it's an addiction and it's a pretty easy thing to do with hypnosis when you have a good system. And the second thing is anxiety and depression even. People that are not necessarily clinically depressed, but people that have a sadness going on, they don't really know what's going on, right? And it comes down to by the time I mention some of these things I've talked about, what's your communication? What's your focus? So what's your language? What's your focus? What's your physiology been like? I'll find that most people give me the same answers. Depressed person, their shoulders are forward, not back most
Yeah.
of the time. They're, breathing shallow instead of deep. That's their physiology. Their focus is focusing on what they can't control most of the time. Their focus is on what isn't working most of the time. Their focus is on what they don't have most of the time. And then finally, the last component of that is the language. And so then I simply ask, how do you talk to yourself when you do well? Oh, I don't ever find out that I'm doing well. Okay. So how do you talk to yourself when you're not doing well, or most of the time? And I really don't talk to myself well at all. There's no self-love there. It's like self-loathing instead.
Yeah.
And so once you shift that in people, once you make people aware, I say 90% of change just comes from me making them aware. If you're not aware that you're talking to yourself, then you'll just keep talking to yourself the same way you've always done it. But once you're aware, you've got control. Michael Singer talks about this in The Untethered Soul. He brings a lot of awareness to the self-talk in that book. And I think that's why it's done so well. And he does it with a spiritual perspective and a biblical perspective as well. So it hits a lot of people that have had a Christian upbringing like I have. But it does it in a way that makes you aware, hey, you're talking to yourself in this way, and you can just talk to yourself a little different, get a different outcome. So that's the language. Then you've also got this focus thing. And for me, as you know, the word trying means failure, and I'm not into that. So I changed that to training. See, I had to train myself to focus on what I do have. That was a big one for me. And so I do a gratitude meditation every day. And then I also had to train myself to focus on what is working instead of what's not, which that one's hard too, because they marked off the words we spelled wrong in school, not the ones we spelled right. And so, I had to train myself to focus on that. What's going right? What's going right? What am I doing right? What am I doing right? And then I had to train myself to focus on what I could control versus what I couldn't. And that's how I came out of what we could call depression. That's how I came out of what we could call anxiety, like I shared. And that's how I came out of a lot of addictions that I had. And so, finally, by doing all that, my physiology my shoulders are naturally back most of the time. I do naturally breathe, like from my diaphragm, from my stomach most of the time. But it took training to get my focus and my language and those other components in place first before I got to this level of health that I'm at now. And so I said this before, but I'll say it again. The quality of your communication directly affects your life. But the other thing that directly affects the quality of life is the cells in your body. And these are always changing. They're dying and replicating so fast you can't even keep track. And when you start to do a cleanse, or you start to drink a whole bunch of alkaline water and go into sunlight and walk around Peru like people are doing today, then you're going to get a whole different physiology in just 7 days than what you have right now. And so that's always in our control. And I like Dr. Huberman. He talks about this with the sleep cycle, and that if you sleep a certain way and that you start to set certain conditions for your sleep, then that'll replenish your cells, because that's when you're healing. That's when you're recuperating all these cells to begin with. And then, the lymph system comes online. A lot of people don't know this, but the number one way you release toxins is through your skin, through sweating. So that's when I was doing keto, I was drinking water, because I was sweating all the time, all this stuff out of my system. And so that's how I lost most of the fat. And it's just a process that once you start to break things down and you start to really just look at the deeper sciences, you start to practice simple things, anybody can change. Anybody can level up.
This has been outstanding. And I'll give you a likely odd bit of praise here,
Sure.
which is that the evolution of the work that you do, the evolution of the approach that you have, it's a perfect example of truly being coachable, but also that of really putting in the work, really working with a ton of people and developing your own theories, your own opinions, your own approach, as opposed to, well, this person told me this. That for anybody who wants to go back and listen to this episode, it's just a masterclass of how to give credit where it's due in terms of the inspiration, but then also how to truly make it your own. Dude, awesome.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. It's always great to share with you. And I'm glad the community gets this as well. I think it's going to really help a lot of people level up.
Yeah. Where can people track you down online? How can they find out more about you?
Yeah, for sure. Facebook, Instagram, Andrew Waldowski. That's a hard name. So vibrational hypnosis is easier. Vibrationalhypnosis.com, vibrationalhypnotist.com are my domains. So you can hit either one and find me that way.
Awesome. And then any final thoughts for the listeners out there?
Yeah. I would just say focus on the quality of your communication, especially to yourself first, and then notice the change of all those around you. When you start to talk to yourself, like the best phrase I have is 3 simple words, all is self. So when you find out that you change what's going on with yourself, all of everything else will begin to change.
Hey there, it's Jason Linett, and once again, thank you so much for engaging with this program, for subscribing to it, for leaving your reviews, for sharing this in your social media channels, and recommending this to other hypnotists. Thank you basically for being an awesome person. So again, to find out more about Andrew and his work, head over to worksmarthypnosis.com/437. And also while you're there, head over to your browser and search for Velvet Rope Hypnosis. Watch the video tour. I'm going to give you a whole business action plan ready to launch. It's only $27. I'm pretty sure we've got a money back guarantee on that page. But seriously, this thing has been a game changer for hypnotists all around the world. Big value, small price. Check that out. velvetropehypnosis.com.
Thanks for listening to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast at worksmarthypnosis.com.